Hello, everyone. How are you doing today?
Very
Wonderfully.
well.
Coming to you from the East Coast. Yes, doing great.
I'm on the East Coast as well right now. I'm in
Oh,
Tampa, Florida. I want to talk about the tricky part. Martin, I'm going to start with you. A lot of this story is based upon your own life and your own experiences. What made you want to put your intimate moments out there for the world to see?
yeah, wonderful question. Intimacy is, that's a really wonderful word that you use. I think there is something so just fundamentally vulnerable about storytelling in and of itself. But then when you're telling your own story, there's a tremendous amount of vulnerability, which is intimate. And particularly about this because it has to do with growing up as uh, a young Catholic person and trying to discover my own sexuality and so on. And so, the, it's interesting when you ask what made me or what, and in some ways, Madison, it's mysterious to me that was a story that I had to tell. There was a sort of an imperative. I think because when I look back, I was trying to understand what happened to me in terms of falling into a really chaotic and yet traumatizing sexual relationship as a young boy. And later in my life, trying to unravel that so that I could find some kind of peace, some kind of forgiveness. And I didn't really know that to begin with. What I knew was that I felt a great deal of confusion and pain, and that I turned to writing in order to sort of pull the threads of the complexity of that story apart, share it with others, and thereby come, I hope, to some understanding, which is why I think we tell stories, to have that intimacy, to connect and say, my gosh, this happens on the planet. I'm trying to make sense of it. And as an artist, I'm sharing it with you in all its complexity, in all the things that created me as a person and didn't quite destroy me, almost ruined me, but in fact made me who I am. And that's the complexity of it.
Absolutely. I'm also going to turn this to the other gentlemen who are on
Yeah.
the call with us. Raphael and Anthony, how did you get brought into this project? When did you first find out about Marty's story and why did you want to get involved?
I'll jump right in because I am an abuse survivor myself, and I, like, classically in the average league, I didn't look at it or realize or deal with it until I was in my 50s, which is seems late in life. How did that happen? Part of my recovery in looking at this was the experience of seeing this production. This production, as Marty just described, fundamentally looked at the core of the question that troubled, that kept me silent, but also enraged me. All of these feelings in relation to the experience. And through an artistic, it was like, of course, a play, a performance would change my life, because that's what happens when it's good, when it's truthful. So I came to it from that experience of a very personal one, and then starting working on with male survivors, and now working with 1 in 6, an organization that deals with survivors and supports them. I thought, wow, if we can capture this, it would be so helpful, because it's going to mean so much to anybody who gets that. So that's where I came into it. And that's a good way to throw it over to Raphael, because he came in as a wonderful filmmaker he is, to take it to the next step.
Yeah, well, Tony and I are dear friends, and Tony basically said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" And I would do anything that Tony asked. And he basically said, "Come see this play." I knew nothing of the play. I hadn't read Marty's book at that point, and I was bowled over by Marty's humanity and just what he had created. This is a hugely award-winning show that was done off-Broadway. It won the Obie Award, which is essentially the off-Broadway Tony. It got Drama Desk Awards and other awards, and as Marty's performed it all over the world. And it, the idea was to be able to make a film that both honored what Marty had done, in this case, to be able to stay out of the way and not make it too complicated, but at the same, in the same breath, also say not to make it a film, to make it its own thing. So when I've watched films of plays, sometimes they can feel a little static to me. They feel sort of proscenium, one-dimensional, and that is sort of, in front of the footlights and behind the footlights. And the idea was, in this case, because Marty is such a master storyteller, is to be able to sort of find a way so that you felt as if you were sitting there with him and he was talking to you, really. And as you will see as you watch the movie, he pulls you in by the sheer force of his performance and what he's speaking about. And at some point, we hopefully forget as watching the film that is on stage, that it feels again like an intimate conversation. And Marty does that. We've shown the film at several other festivals and had extraordinary response. The impact again of what Marty does is just exquisite. And so this is an award-winning play that's now a movie. The opportunity is that it gets to be seen by more people, that it reaches a wider audience. The themes and the issues of sexual abuse for men, but also for women. I've had many women speak to me about how impactful this is to them and how it has given them an ability or permission to be able to speak. And again, that's because of Marty's humanity and his humor and his storytelling. Sorry to talk about you in the third person, Marty, while you're here, but it is I feel just profoundly honored to be a part of this project, and then to be able to then allow it to be sort of a door opener for people or a conversation starter. The idea of it traveling and again, sort of reaching into people's lives that might not have otherwise is very exciting to me.
On that note, if someone has already seen the play back when it was being performed, what are the differences and similarities that they can look forward to when they go to screen the film?
Well, interestingly, Madison, it's interesting you asked that. The play that I wrote comes from my book of the same name, The Tricky Part, first appeared in New York City off-Broadway in 2004. And we decided the director, Seth Barish, and I, and his theater company and so on, we decided to revive it here in New York City off-Broadway in 2018. So just 3 years ago. I actually asked myself the question, Madison, what's different now 16 years later? I'm going to change some of the text. I've got to look at this because so much has happened. Something you mentioned earlier, the Me Too movement has occurred, where consciousness is changing. There's this beautiful there's much more awareness of people of the trans community, the questioning community. Should there be textual changes in the play? And ultimately, guess what happened? I did not change a word of the play. So to answer your question, Madison, there's no difference in the play as text from 2004 to when it was revived in 2018 and captured so beautifully by Raphael and produced by Tony Edwards. The difference is that my hair is much grayer and I'm 16 years older. And I will say that what is different is that I feel like I was really honestly able to perform with a lot more centeredness and calmness, and a lot less fear and shame, and a lot less trepidation and terror than I did 16 years ago. And that's been a joy. I experienced a great deal of joy reviving the play in 2018, and an immense amount of gratitude that Anthony Edwards and Raphael Sbarge made the effort to capture it on film.
Well, that's beautiful. And I know we were talking about the Me Too movement earlier, and I don't want to pair the Me Too movement with your beautiful production, but I am curious because it does bring up the question, why do you think such an important topic surrounding male abuse has become taboo even today?
I'll jump in that I think it's been, quote, taboo to talk for a long time because there's stigma attached. There's a lot in relation to The only way out of any kind of traumatic experience is to talk about it. You have to start with a conversation. And the layers that cover up that first conversation of a man, in our case, to be able to say, something happened to me, the layers is got historic, men don't cry, men don't share feelings, tough it up, suck it up, get over it. Don't, there's a lot of posturing, to quote maleness, that doesn't help when it comes to recovery. And I says the best way I would equate what's going on in the world now and what's happening with male survivors is there's a lot of reason for women who in the Me Too movement need to get angry and stand up and say, this happened to me, and get mad. The fact is, men who've buried trauma of that experience have so much anger. What they actually need to do is get quiet and talk quietly and share honestly in one-on-one. So it's a different way to recovery. And because of that, you have to find other ways of hearing the truth. And that's what Marty's play does so beautifully, is whenever you hear someone speak the truth, which he does, it opens doors. And it's not just for men. As we're saying, this is anybody who's experienced childhood trauma or has buried something that they somehow feel responsible for. When children are abused, the adult child goes, it was somehow my fault. I wanted to be loved. They cannot translate this idea of how is it possible that an adult could hurt a child? That's what happened, but it doesn't make sense. So we bury it as shame. And that's why just simply having the conversation, breaking the stigma is the whole point. We're not going to solve every individual problem. We're not going to cure, we're not going to eliminate pedophilia. It's not going to go away, but we are going to deal better in how we recover from it. Conversation starting earlier, people being able to say, hey, mom, it was like when my mom asked me, hopefully there'll be another generation that at 14 will say, yeah, something is happening, as opposed to what I did, which was just absolutely not. This could never, he loves us. He's the defense, because so it's about breaking down stigma. And that's where we kind of are excited about this, because it's through the arts, it's through storytelling, it's through great plays, and now a great movie that Raphael made, that doors are open. We've had this experience, a few weeks ago, we had an experience with 160 students in college age who were studying social work. And it was the first time they were having open discussion about specific topic of what it is for male survivors to, and they're going to be going out into the world to talk this. So anyway, we're excited about that.
That was so beautifully said. And you answered all the rest of my questions within that statement. So thank you for doing my job. But such a beautiful movie, you guys. I'm so excited for it to get out there and for it to really break down that stigma, because that is what's needed in the recovery process moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Madison.
Thanks, Madison.
Thank you guys so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank
That
you.
it was
Seeing you.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording real quick and then we can chat.